Have you ever had someone look you in the eye, smile sweetly, and act like they love you while sharpening a knife behind your back? That was my life with Carol. She was my husband's mother, but I use the term loosely. From the moment Josh introduced me to her, I could feel it. I was never going to be enough. Not for her, not for her son, not for the perfect little image she built in her mind. And no matter what I did, how polite I was, how successful I became, how happy Josh and I were, none of it mattered. I was the outsider, the intruder, the one who ruined her picture perfect fantasy of who her son should have ended up with. When we first got married, I thought it would pass. She'd come around eventually. I kept telling myself that. I smiled through the backhanded compliments, the passive aggressive comments at family dinners, the way she always forgot to include me in group messages or made sure my name was last in every conversation. It hurt, but I swallowed it. For Josh. Because I loved him and he loved her, and I didn't want to make him choose. But people like Carol, they don't soften with time, they sharpen. And after our son Liam was born, she didn't mellow out. She doubled down. Suddenly, she was showing up unannounced, criticizing the way I dressed Liam, questioned everything from the organic baby food I made to the books I read him. Oh, in my day, we just let babies cry it out. You're spoiling him, she'd say with a tight-lipped smile that made my blood boil. She'd bring gifts with tags still on, clearly expecting me to return what I'd already bought. It wasn't help. She wanted control, and I was supposed to be grateful for it. Still, I bit my tongue. I told myself, she's just old-fashioned. It's just her way. Don't rock the boat. Josh, to his credit, tried to mediate, but he was caught in the middle, torn between the woman who raised him and the one he'd chosen to build a life with. I don't blame him for that. Not entirely. But I do blame him for what happened at Liam's birthday. Liam was turning 2. We planned a sweet little backyard party. Nothing extravagant, just family and a few friends. Balloons, cupcakes, a little plastic slide. I even baked the cake myself. It was supposed to be a happy day, a celebration of how far we'd come as a family. But in hindsight, I should have known she'd find a way to ruin it. I saw it happen from across the yard. Carol leaned in, whispering to Josh. At first, I thought it was harmless, maybe a comment about the weather or something she'd forgotten in the car. But then I saw the shift in Josh's face. His jaw clenched, his eyes dropped to the ground. She said something else, sharper this time, and he pulled away like she'd slapped him. I stood there, frozen, holding a half-open gift in one hand, watching the two of them like I was watching a car crash in slow motion. It wasn't until later that night, after the guests had left and Liam was asleep, that Josh finally told me. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when he walked in, silent, pale. "She wants a DNA test," he said, barely above a whisper. I turned slowly. "What?" He looked ashamed. "She thinks Liam might not be mine." I didn't speak, not right away. My heart didn't race. It sank. Not because I was guilty, but because I knew this wasn't about doubt. It was about control, about humiliation, about her winning once and for all. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just nodded. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." Josh blinked, startled. "What? You don't have to—" "No," I said. "If that's what it takes to shut her up, fine. Let's get the test." So we did. A week later, we were at the clinic. Blood samples, chain of custody, everything official. Carol tagged along smug as ever. She acted like she was doing us a favor, like she was the brave truth seeker in the room. I almost laughed at how proud she looked, like she'd finally won, like she'd cornered me, and now I had no choice but to break. She had no idea, because what she didn't know was that I had already noticed something strange months ago, something that didn't add up, old family photos that didn't look quite right, medical history that didn't match Josh's, a comment he once made about never understanding why he didn't have his mom's nose, even though his sister did. It had been gnawing at me for a while. So when we scheduled Liam's paternity test, I made a quiet request to the lab, a second test, one no one knew about. I submitted it under my name, I gave them the samples, and I asked them to compare Josh's DNA to Carol's. Not to prove that Liam was his, to prove that Josh wasn't hers. And 2 weeks later, that truth came crashing down. I'll never forget the moment the results came in. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Josh had just gotten home from work, still in his scrubs, smelling faintly of antiseptic and exhaustion. The envelope was waiting on the kitchen table, right where I'd left it. Sealed, official, silent. He hesitated, just standing there, staring at it like it might explode. I didn't push, I didn't say a word. I just watched him pick it up, hands trembling slightly as he slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the folded papers inside. His eyes scanned the first page, Liam's paternity report. His lips moved as he read the percentages. Then he exhaled. "She was wrong," he whispered. Of course she was wrong. He handed the paper to me. 99.99% match, just as I knew it would be. I felt the tiniest flicker of relief. Relief that the storm might pass, that this ridiculous test might finally shut her up. But then I remembered the second envelope, the one addressed only to me. I pulled it from my bag, heart pounding for the first time. It was one thing to suspect something. It was another to see it confirmed in cold, clinical print. Josh noticed the envelope, furrowed his brow, but said nothing as I opened it. My hands were steady. My breath wasn't. I read the results once, then twice. My stomach dropped. There was no biological match between Josh and Carol. 0%. Not a close relative. Not even a distant one. According to the science, the woman who raised him, who had controlled, manipulated, and tormented him his entire life, was not his mother. I didn't say anything right away. I just passed the paper to Josh. He read it once, frowning. Then again, slower this time. I saw the color drain from his face. "What? What is this?" he asked, voice cracking. "This can't be right. I had them test you against her," I said softly. "I needed to know. Things didn't add up, Josh. The photos, the medical stuff. I just had a feeling." He stumbled back into a chair like the wind had been knocked out of him. He sat there staring at the paper like it was written in another language. "But she's my mom." "No," I said gently. "She's the woman who raised you. But she's not your biological mother." He didn't speak for a long time. I let the silence hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. When he finally stood up, he didn't look at me. He just walked to the front door, grabbed his keys, and left. I didn't hear from him for 4 hours. When he came back, he didn't say where he'd gone. He just looked different, dazed, hollow, like something had been scooped out of him. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. The next morning, he called her. He didn't tell her over the phone. He just asked her to come over. She said yes, probably thinking we were going to apologize, that she'd won. She arrived an hour later, breezing through the front door like she owned the place. She even had the nerve to bring muffins, store-bought, probably from the clearance rack. Josh didn't waste time. "We got the test results," he said coldly, standing by the kitchen counter. She blinked, smiled faintly. "I told you, didn't I? I just wanted peace of mind." "They said Liam is mine," he continued. "No doubt, 99.99%. Her smile froze. "Well, good. I mean, I never said—" "But that's not all we tested," he interrupted. She tilted her head confused. "What do you mean?" "I had them test me. Against you." Her entire face changed in an instant. The color drained. Her mouth parted slightly. Her eyes darted toward me, then back to him. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "I'm not your biological son," he said, his voice shaking. "The test says we're not related. At all." For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stood there, blinking like she was trying to wake up from a dream. Then, without warning, she sat down heavily on the couch and covered her mouth with both hands. "I was going to tell you," she said finally. "Someday. I just never found the right time." Josh didn't respond. He just stared at her. expression blank. "I adopted you when you were a baby," she said. "It was closed. You were a surprise. Your father and he didn't want more children, but I did, so I found a way. I was going to tell you when you were older, but then the years passed and I didn't know how. I thought I thought it didn't matter anymore." "You lied to me for 30 years," Josh said, voice flat. "You lied and then accused my wife of cheating." "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," she whispered. "You didn't just hurt me," he said. "You broke something." The silence afterward felt endless. She didn't cry, she didn't beg. She just sat there, small and silent, as Josh turned and walked out of the room. And me, I followed him, heart pounding, because the woman who wanted proof had just been exposed, and I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. For the next few days, Josh was a ghost in our house. He moved through the rooms like a shadow, silent, withdrawn, barely eating. He didn't touch his guitar, didn't call his sister, didn't even glance at the framed photos on the wall. Photos that now seemed like props from a fake play. Sometimes I'd catch him staring off into space, eyes glazed, like he was replaying memories that had just been rewritten. And in a way, he was. Because when you find out your entire life has been built on a lie, you don't just lose trust, you lose time. I tried to give him space, but also stayed close. I'd leave his coffee on the counter in the mornings, sit with him on the couch in silence, lightly brush my fingers against his shoulder just to remind him I was still there, still real, still his. He never pulled away, but he didn't lean in either. He was unraveling quietly, and it broke my heart to watch. Liam, thankfully, was too little to understand. His giggles, his squeals, the way he held his arms out for Josh, those were the only things that got through. Josh would scoop him up, bury his face in his curly hair, and close his eyes like he was holding onto an anchor in a storm. That was the only time I saw real emotion from him. The rest of the time, he was hollow. On the fourth night after the confrontation, he finally spoke. We were lying in bed, both staring at the ceiling. He hadn't turned off the lamp yet. "She never loved me," he said quietly. I turned to him. "You don't know that." "She loved the idea of me," he continued. "The way she paraded me around, pushed me into honors classes, forced piano lessons, got me into her alma mater. It wasn't love, it was a project. I was a trophy, something she could polish and control. I didn't argue, because he wasn't wrong. I used to wonder why she was always harder on me than on Kate," he said. "Now it makes sense. I wasn't hers. Not really. I was the reminder of whatever she had to sacrifice to get me." I reached over and held his hand. He squeezed it, finally, like he was coming back to me. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not yelling, for not saying I told you so, for just standing by me." That was the first night he really slept. But as Josh slowly began to process what had happened, Carol didn't go quietly. She started calling, texting, first apologizing, then pleading, then blaming. Her messages turned from "I'm so sorry, please let me explain," to "I did what I had to do. You'll understand someday," to "Emily put you up to this, didn't she?" By the end of the week, she'd left 9 voicemails, each more unhinged than the last. She couldn't handle the fallout. She was used to being the one in control, the one pulling the strings. But now the strings were cut, and she was flailing. She showed up at Josh's work one afternoon, causing a scene in the hospital parking lot. Security had to walk her out. Josh came home shaking with rage and embarrassment. "I'm done," he said that night. "I'm cutting her off." And he did. He blocked her number, removed her from Liam's daycare pickup list, even changed the security settings on our smart lock. He didn't want her near us, not after what she'd done. But then came the letter. It arrived in the mail about a week later. No return address, just our names written in shaky cursive. I found it first. Inside was a handwritten note, 5 pages long. It was a mess of explanations, excuses, and manipulations. She said she'd adopted Josh after struggling for years with infertility, that she'd been ashamed of not being able to carry a child, and that's why she never told him. She talked about how hard she tried to be a good mother, how much she sacrificed, how terrified she was of losing him, and then, of course, she turned it all on me. "She's trying to ruin our bond," she wrote. "Emily has always resented me. She's poisoned you against me. Please don't let her take my son away." I showed it to Josh. He read it in silence, then set it on fire in the kitchen sink. We watched it burn, the smoke curling up toward the ceiling, the ashes floating like dead memories. "She still doesn't get it," he said. "This isn't about you. It's about her. What she did. What she hid." But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because when someone like Carol loses control, they don't retreat. They regroup. And sure enough, she wasn't done. 2 days later, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. The subject line made my stomach flip. "If you want the real story about your husband, we should talk." I stared at that subject line for a full minute before I clicked. My pulse pounded in my ears, my palms went clammy. The email came from a burner address. No name, no photo, just a jumble of letters and numbers. The body was short, too short. I know things about Josh, things he doesn't want you to know. If you're smart, you'll listen before you make any more mistakes. He's not who you think he is. Neither is she. No signature, no details, just that cryptic, threatening little note. At first, I thought it was spam or a sick prank, but something about the tone made my skin crawl. There was a coldness in it, a quiet calculation that didn't feel random. My first instinct was to delete it, but I didn't. I couldn't. I forwarded it to myself and kept it hidden in a private folder. I didn't tell Josh, not yet, but I couldn't shake it. For the next few days, I found myself watching him. Not in a suspicious way. At least not at first. Just observing, looking for signs, anything that might hint at what this mystery person was talking about. But Josh was just Josh. Quiet, thoughtful, still processing everything that had happened, still rebuilding himself, still showing up for Liam with all the love and effort I'd always known him for. And yet, I started thinking about the little things, the way he never talked about his childhood without changing the subject, the medical forms with gaps, the photo albums where he seemed to vanish between the ages of 3 and 5. I used to think Carol was just bad at documenting. Now, I wasn't so sure. So I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I started digging. It began with public records. Birth certificates, old address logs, archived school enrollment info. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just anything. Anything that felt off. And then I found it. A court filing from 1997. It was buried deep in the Denver Public Records database. Sealed adoption. 2 names listed as adoptive parents, Alan and Carol Hartwell. But here's what made my stomach drop. The child's name was listed as Noah James, not Josh Hartwell. I blinked, read it again, same birth date, same year, but the name was different. Josh hadn't just been adopted, he'd been renamed. Suddenly, everything made sense. The secrecy, the gaps, the way Carol had always clung to him like he might vanish if she let go. I sat on the couch for what felt like an hour, staring at the screen, trying to decide what to do next. This wasn't just Carol's secret anymore. This was Josh's identity. And someone out there, whoever sent that email, knew. Eventually, I told him. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Liam was napping. The house was still. "I need to show you something," I said, sliding the laptop toward him. He read the court document in silence. I watched his throat move as he swallowed hard, then again. "Noah," he whispered. "I didn't want to go behind your back," I said. "But when I got that email, I needed to understand." He looked up sharply. "What email?" I hesitated, then opened the folder and showed him. He read the message, eyes narrowing. "This is her," he muttered. "It has to be. She's trying to scare you, manipulate you, again." "But who would know your old name?" I asked. "If the records were sealed," he froze. I don't remember anything before I was 5, he said slowly. Not really, just flashes. A red truck, a woman with dark hair, a dog. I thought they were dreams. What if they weren't? I asked quietly. He leaned back in his chair like the weight of the truth was pressing down on him. What if Carol wasn't the one hiding everything? I frowned. What do you mean? What if there was a reason she adopted me so quietly? What if my birth parents didn't give me up willingly? The thought hit like a punch. I hadn't considered that. That maybe the secrecy wasn't just about shame. Maybe it was about something darker, something legal, or worse, illegal. Josh stood abruptly, pacing. What if she took me or bought me? What if the story I've lived my whole life is a cover for something she didn't want anyone to know? I stared at him, stunned. The pieces were fitting together, but the picture was starting to look horrifying. And then another email came through. Same burner account. This time it had an attachment, a photo. I opened it. My blood turned to ice. It was a picture of a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, pale eyes, and Josh, only a few years old, sitting in her lap. The caption underneath read, "Ask him if he remembers her. She didn't give him up." He was taken. Josh stared at the photo like it was a portal to another life. A life buried so deep under decades of silence and lies that he couldn't tell if it was real or imagined. He took the laptop from me, zooming in, scanning every detail. His mouth parted, but no sound came out. Finally, after a full minute, he whispered, "I know that woman." The room was dead quiet. Even the hum of the fridge felt louder. I barely breathed. "I don't know her name," he said slowly, "but I've seen her in my dreams, over and over. She'd be sitting in a rocking chair, humming something soft. I thought I thought it was nothing, just noise from my brain, but this is her. This is the woman I remember holding me when I was little." A chill ran through me. This wasn't just childhood memory resurfacing. This was trauma peeking through the cracks, finally getting air for the first time in years. "What do we do?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer. He just closed the laptop and walked out of the room. That night, I found him in Liam's room long after our son had fallen asleep. Josh sat in the rocking chair motionless, staring at the wall like he was waiting for answers to fall from it. I stood in the doorway, watching him. He didn't say anything. He just kept rocking slowly, his eyes vacant. The next morning, he asked me to help him find a private investigator. "I need to know who she is," he said. "I need to know if she's still alive, if she's looking for me, or if she looked for me." So we hired someone, a local PI with experience in adoption tracing and cold cases. I handed over the photo, the adoption file, and the emails. I told him everything, every gut feeling, every inconsistency, every detail we had. He nodded and promised to look into it. Said it could take weeks, maybe longer. But it didn't take long, because 2 days later, another email came through. This time it wasn't anonymous. The name was Grace Ellington. Subject line, "You deserve the truth." And inside was a story that turned everything upside down. "My name is Grace. I'm your birth mother, Josh. I've been looking for you for over 25 years. She went on to explain everything. She'd been a single mother, young and struggling, but deeply in love with her son. His name had been Noah James Ellington. She worked nights, went to school during the day, and did everything she could to keep them afloat. Then one night, her babysitter, someone she thought she could trust, never brought Noah back. They vanished. She called the police, filed reports, but there were no leads. It was like they disappeared into thin air. She suspected trafficking, but the system was slow, cold, dismissive. Months passed, then years, and eventually she was told it was a lost cause. She never gave up. She said she kept searching, got involved with missing children's organizations, started volunteering. She even helped other families search for their kids because it was the only way she could survive her own grief. And then, one day, while helping someone navigate a DNA testing site, she found a close match to someone named Josh Hartwell. She hadn't reached out immediately. She was terrified. What if it wasn't him? What if he hated her for not finding him sooner? What if his life had been good and she showed up just to ruin it? But then she saw the Facebook photos of Josh, of Liam, of Carol, and she knew the woman who stole her son had raised him under her name, as her own. Josh sat beside me on the couch, eyes wide, hands trembling as I read the message aloud. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. She destroyed 2 lives. I nodded. At least 2. He looked up, pain etched deep in his face. I need to see her. Grace. I have to know. I hesitated. Are you sure? That's a lot to process. And once you open that door, I have to, he said. If I don't, it'll eat me alive. So we messaged her back. Told her we believed her. Asked if she'd be willing to meet in person. She responded almost instantly. She said yes. She lived in Boulder, just an hour away. She'd never move far because she'd always hoped he was still close. We set a date 2 days later, a quiet park near her house. Josh barely slept that night. He spent hours pacing, going over what he'd say, what he'd ask, but nothing he practiced felt like enough. How do you prepare to meet the woman who gave birth to you after believing she abandoned you your whole life? And I had no idea what this meeting would do to him. Would it bring healing or just more pain? What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Carol had found out, and she wasn't going to let this reunion happen without a fight. The day of the meeting, the sky was gray, one of those heavy, overcast mornings where the air feels like it's holding its breath. Josh barely touched his breakfast. I packed a small bag with snacks and toys for Liam, just in case we needed to calm him during the ride. But honestly, the toddler had more emotional stability that morning than either of us. We drove in near silence. Josh kept one hand on the wheel, the other clenched into a fist on his thigh. I offered to drive, but he shook his head. I need the control, he muttered, and I understood. This was the first choice he was making for himself in a lifetime of choices made about him. Grace had picked the park, a quiet spot, surrounded by evergreens and with benches nestled in private little nooks. She said it was where she used to bring Noah when he was a baby. It was where she last held him before everything went dark. As we pulled into the lot, my heart began to race. Josh cut the engine. His knuckles were white around the steering wheel. I reached over, rested my hand on his. You don't have to say everything today, I said gently. Just be there. Let it be real. He nodded, swallowed, and got out of the car. I carried Liam as we walked toward the meeting spot. She was already there. Grace stood beneath a tall pine, arms folded tight across her chest like she was holding herself together. She wore a pale blue sweater, the kind you'd find in a secondhand shop, and her hair was pulled back in a loose braid. When she saw us, she didn't move, just froze like she couldn't trust her eyes. Josh stopped a few feet away. They stared at each other. Then slowly, Grace took a step forward, and another, until she was right in front of him. She didn't cry, she didn't reach out. She just looked at him like he was the answer to every prayer she'd whispered into her pillow for 25 years. Josh finally broke the silence. I used to have dreams about you, Grace's voice cracked. I never stopped dreaming about you. They sat, talked. It wasn't a dramatic scene. There were no wailing reunions or movie-perfect embraces. It was quiet, raw, hesitant. She told him stories, what their life had been like before he was taken, how she'd filed reports with every agency she could find, how she'd kept his baby blanket in a box for decades, hoping one day she'd return it to him. Josh listened, nodded, asked cautious questions. He didn't cry, but I could tell he was breaking inside, breaking and rebuilding at the same time. Liam ran between us, too young to understand the weight of what was happening. Grace looked at him like he was made of stardust. He looks just like you did, she whispered. We stayed for nearly 2 hours. As we got up to leave, Grace hesitated. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, creased, faded. It showed a younger version of her holding baby Noah, the same picture we'd received in that email. This is the only one I had, she said softly. I want you to have it. Josh took it, held it like it was sacred. But before we could walk away, another voice cut through the still air. Well, isn't this touching? We all turned. Carol. She was standing at the edge of the path, arms crossed, a smug look plastered across her face like she was the star of the show. Josh stiffened. What are you doing here? I should be asking you that, she snapped, striding forward. Meeting with this woman like she didn't abandon you, like she didn't leave you to be raised by strangers. Grace looked stunned. You took him? You lied? I saved him, Carol interrupted. From a life of poverty and chaos. You were a broke college dropout with no support. I gave him a real chance. Josh stepped between him, his voice low but lethal. You stole my life, Carol. I gave you one, she shouted. You think she would have raised you better in some roach-infested apartment? You had piano lessons, a private school, vacations to Italy, and this is how you repay me? Grace's face crumpled, but she stood tall. You kidnapped my child, Carol's eyes flashed. Prove it. I stepped forward. We already did. Her smirk faltered, just a flicker. Then she turned to Josh. You're making a huge mistake. You walk away from me now. You'll regret it. You think she'll fix what's broken in you? She left you. I didn't. Josh stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Not as a mother, but as the woman who had rewritten his entire life. You questioned if Liam was mine, he said, voice tight. You tried to humiliate Emily, and now I know why. Because deep down you knew your own lie was coming undone. Carol's face paled. He stepped closer. You wanted a son, Carol, but you didn't get to take one. She opened her mouth to respond, but then, for the first time in my life, she was speechless. Josh turned away, and we walked out of that park without looking back. But none of us knew what Carol was about to do next. She wasn't finished. I should have known that someone like Carol wouldn't go down quietly. That a woman who built her entire life on lies wouldn't let the truth unravel her without throwing one last punch. It started the next morning. Josh and I woke up to our phones buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from numbers we didn't recognize. At first, I thought it might be Grace. Maybe she'd had second thoughts or something had happened overnight. But then I opened my email. Subject: Shame on you, Emily. It was from a woman named Linda, one of Carol's friends from her women's club. She wrote a nasty, condescending message, accusing me of tearing apart a beautiful mother-son relationship, of manipulating Josh, and of weaponizing DNA to destroy a family. I stared at the words in disbelief. Then another message came in, and another. I scrolled through Facebook. Carol had posted a public message. No names, but it was clear enough who she meant. It breaks my heart to see how easily a family can be poisoned. Some people will stop at nothing to destroy the love between a mother and her child. To the woman who raised him, you'll always be his real mother. Biology doesn't make you a parent, love does. I wanted to scream. She was spinning the story, twisting reality until she was the victim and we were the villains. She made it sound like Grace was some unstable stranger, like I had orchestrated the whole thing and she, the kidnapper, was the wounded party. Josh's phone rang. He picked up, then immediately hung up. His hands were shaking. That was my boss, he said, voice flat. Apparently someone sent an email to HR accusing me of being emotionally unstable. Said I might need a mental health evaluation before handling any more projects. My stomach dropped. Are you serious? He nodded, jaw tight. They didn't believe it, thank God, but they wanted me to know. It was anonymous, but we know who sent it. Carol wasn't just throwing a tantrum. She was going scorched earth. And then she crossed a line that made everything before it looked like child's play. That evening, I was getting Liam ready for bed when the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. A woman stood on our porch, holding a clipboard and an official-looking envelope. Can I help you? I asked through the door. I'm with Child Protective Services, she said. I need to speak with Emily Hartwell. My blood turned to ice. I opened the door slowly. I'm Emily. What's going on? She handed me the envelope. We received an anonymous report alleging neglect and unsafe living conditions. Standard protocol requires an in-home visit. Josh appeared behind me, his face draining of color. "What the hell is this?" The woman, who to her credit was calm and professional, explained that someone had reported Liam was being left alone for long hours, that our house was filthy, and that there had been yelling and emotional instability witnessed by neighbors. She said she had to check for herself, make sure the child was safe. It was humiliating. We let her in. She looked around, asked polite but probing questions. Thankfully, Liam was cheerful and healthy. Our house was clean, and the visit ended without incident. But the damage was done. Carol had weaponized the system, tried to paint us as unfit parents to scare us into submission, to control us. Josh was silent for hours after the agent left. He sat at the kitchen table staring at his hands. When I finally broke the silence, he looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time: pure rage. "She's not my mother," he said, voice low and deadly. "She's a parasite. She doesn't love me. She loves owning me. And I'm done. No more contact. No more second chances." He called our lawyer the next day. We filed a cease and desist, sent her a formal notice barring her from contacting us, our son, or anyone in our professional circles. If she violated it, we'd take it to court. We changed our numbers, blocked her on everything, told Liam that Grandma Carol had to take a long trip and wouldn't be around for a while. He didn't seem to mind. He barely remembered her smile. But there was one more thing Josh needed to do. He called Grace. "I want to go public," he told her. "I want the truth out there. I want my real name." Grace hesitated at first. "It's not safe," she said. "Carol's already dangerous." But Josh was firm. "She stole my identity. My name isn't Josh Hartwell. It's Noah James Ellington. And I want it back." The process took months. Legal petitions, court filings, hearings. We braced for Carol to retaliate. But after the CPS stunt backfired, she went silent. Whether it was out of fear or shame, we never found out. But on the day the judge signed the final papers, Josh walked out of that courthouse with tears in his eyes and a smile I hadn't seen in years. He was Noah again. And Carol? She became a ghost. But even ghosts have a way of creeping back when you least expect it. The day Noah legally reclaimed his name was more than symbolic. It was the final piece of a puzzle that had been scattered since birth. I watched him stand outside the courthouse, holding the certificate with trembling hands, sunlight warming his face, as if the universe itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. He wasn't Josh Hartwell anymore, a name Carol had given him, shaped him with, controlled him by. He was Noah Ellington, son of grace, husband, father, free man. We thought that would be the end, that she'd wither in silence, finally recognizing the war was over. But Carol never learned when to quit. A few weeks later, we received a certified letter. Carol was suing us for emotional distress, defamation, and the intentional alienation of her son. I almost laughed when I read it. Almost, but I knew this wasn't about winning. This was about dragging us back into her hell. She couldn't stand being ignored, powerless, irrelevant. She was reaching out from her crumbling pedestal, trying to pull us back down. But this time, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Noah didn't hesitate. He hired a high-powered attorney, the kind of shark that makes people nervous just by entering the courtroom. We countersued for harassment, defamation, false CPS reports, and emotional damages. And for the first time, everything came out in court. Her lies, the adoption, the forged documents, the fake medical records, the CPS stunt. Even the anonymous emails to Noah's job traced back to her IP address. We presented photos, emails, medical inconsistencies. Grace testified. So did the CPS agent. Our lawyer revealed that Carol had violated HIPAA laws by stealing my medical file in a desperate attempt to prove Liam wasn't Noah's. She'd broken the law so many times, the judge had to stop the hearing twice to confirm certain facts were real. Carol sat across from us, pale, quiet, cornered for the first time in her life. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for a lifeline. But there was none. The courtroom wasn't her kingdom, and no amount of crocodile tears could save her now. The verdict? She lost, every claim dismissed. Our countersuit? Upheld in full. She was ordered to pay damages. Nothing life-ruining, but enough to make her feel it, enough to make her name toxic in her social circles. Her reputation shattered, her friends? Gone. Her standing in her neighborhood? Non-existent. Even her women's club voted to suspend her membership. The final blow came from Noah. In a court statement, calm and composed, he asked the judge to place a permanent restraining order on Carol. Not just for us, but for Liam. She can lie about who she is all she wants, he said, his voice steady. But she's not welcome in our lives. Not anymore. Not ever. When the judge granted it, Carol let out a soft, stunned gasp. Her hands trembled. Her lips parted like she wanted to scream. But nothing came out. It was over. Truly over. We walked out of that courtroom arm in arm. For the first time in years, I felt light, whole, vindicated. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been seen. After the trial, we sold our house and moved out of Denver. We wanted a clean slate, a fresh chapter, somewhere Carol's shadow couldn't reach. Noah started using his real name again, proudly. It was like watching someone come back to life. He changed his email, his social media, everything. And little by little, the pain began to fade. Grace became part of our family, not in some forced, awkward way, but gently, naturally. She started joining us for holidays. Liam adored her. He called her Grandma Grace without being told. Sometimes I caught her tearing up when he hugged her, as if each tiny moment was healing a crack left behind by all those lost years. As for me, I went back to work, focused on my patients, built a new rhythm. People often asked why I still wore my wedding ring with such pride after all that drama. And I'd smile, because that ring wasn't just a symbol of love. It was a symbol of survival, of truth winning out over manipulation, of us. One day, months later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just a thin envelope with a single line written inside. I hope you're happy. You ruined everything. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name to know who wrote it. I didn't cry, I didn't burn it, I didn't even show Noah. I just folded it once, tossed it in the trash, and went back to baking cookies with Liam. 'Cause Carol was wrong. We didn't ruin anything. She did. And now she gets to live with that, alone, bitter, and irrelevant. As for us, we live free, we live true, and we live happy. Funny, isn't it? The DNA test she demanded to destroy me ended up destroying her. Be careful what you wish for, because the truth always finds a way out. And sometimes it comes with receipts. You wanted proof, Carol. You got the truth. Hope it keeps you warm at night.